Hello everybody and welcome back to Threat Assessment. Sorry it's been so long since I posted one. Been pretty busy with my last semester of school, but now that I've graduated and have a lot more free time, these should be coming a lot more regularly. So, remember we do have a Discord, we do have an in-game channel, but all that's in the description so I don't need to talk about it. So let's get going here. Today we're going to focus on the Stabber. The Stabber is a highly versatile platform. It's fast enough to pick its engagements, but tough enough to last through some overwhelming odds if you get caught out. While it is a difficult ship to master, the fortunate part is that it's pretty cheap, so you can whelp these pretty much all day. So before we get going into fits or how to fly this ship, let's talk about the bonuses you get. There's only two actually, and they're per level bonuses. Every skill level in Minmatar Cruiser, you get 7.5% bonus to the rate of fire and a 10% bonus to the fall off range. This means that you'll be able to fire faster and shoot further, which is very nice when you're getting kited out by an even smaller tackling ship. Slot layout here is pretty standard. It's 6 highs, 4 mids, 4 lows, and of course with your T1 ships you get the 3 rig slots. The interesting part about this is the high slots actually. You get 4 turret slots and 2 launcher slots, meaning you can go with 4 turrets, and you have 2 utility highs for Gnosis or Newts, or you can go 4 turrets and 2 launchers, which is a pretty common way to do it as well. You also have a full flight of light drones, which is very useful for taking on smaller stuff. The mids here are pretty well set up to have a buffer tank, though active tanking is an option. I do prefer the buffer tank though, it just seems a lot more solid and like you last a lot longer. Preferably this fit here, I have 2 large shield extenders at damage control, an EM resist rig, and 2 extender rigs, giving it around 23k EHP with my skills. Now some of you might be asking why don't you get the T2 extender rigs. Honestly, they're really just not worth it. At about 20 million a piece, that's more than the ship hull easily, and most fits are under 20 million if you go cheap fits. So you'd be tripling the cost of your fit if you were to get Tech 2 rigs. So here are a few other fits that I came up with that you might be interested in testing out. When looking at these fits, please understand I am in no way an expert at how to do this. I am learning as we go, just as you are. Things you need to ask yourself when you're fitting your ship. What do I want to do? What do I want to engage? Where do I want to fly? All those things will influence how you fit your ship. Do you prefer active tank? Do you think you can do better? All things you need to think about. These fits here are simply to start the discussion and start you thinking on kind of how it might work out and how things fit on this ship. So now let's talk about some flight patterns for the Stabber. Your first and primary method of avoiding damage is kiting the enemy. You want to try and stick around that 15 to 20 kilometer range because your ship is fast and agile and can orbit them at that range fairly easily even when pulsing your micro warp drive. And your autocannons have pretty solid range so they can apply damage just fine there. I say this mainly because in PvP, the ability to kite with ships like these can really be the difference between a fun roam and a quick whelp and a sad day. Brawling in this ship is possible, I guess, but always be sure to have a Newt or Nos when doing so, otherwise it doesn't really make sense that you're that close. Rapid lights have plenty of range that you could still stick out at 20 kilometers, so why not just have the point and stay safer? Because if you start to lose in point range, you can just overheat that micro warp drive and burn out of there. The engagement profile for the Stabber is pretty straightforward. It excels at deleting smaller targets, so use this. Even when you're outnumbered by smaller targets, you should be able to take down at least 1 or 2 before going down, provided it's not an overwhelming number. But even if you lose your ship, as long as you take out a few guys, or as long as you have fun and learn something, the engagement was worth it, and you should always walk away knowing that. When engaging similar sized targets, be careful. It doesn't excel at taking out ships of its same size, and they're often a hard fight. as ships larger than you especially are hard to take out. You don't have a ton of damage in this ship, and you don't have a ton of staying power, so you want to make sure that you can get in this fight and be done in around 30 seconds to a minute at most, otherwise you're probably not going to win. Which brings up a good point. The capacitor on this ship is not exactly the greatest, but it's good enough that it can last at the duration of most engagements you'll be in. If your capacitor lasts more than 40 seconds, you should be good enough to finish the fight. So don't worry about being cap stable in this. You won't be. It just won't happen unless you got a weird fit that doesn't have a lot of tank, or it's just damage and buffer with not much extra. One of the main things you want to avoid in this ship is blaster brawlers. Those are gonna hold you down, and they're fast as well. So you don't want to engage unless you're confident the fight's gonna be over quickly. A primary example of this would be a Thorax or a Brutix. Those ships are gonna hold you down, and they're gonna burn you real quick. So now let's move to the actual threat assessment of this video. So the offense, starting out there, I give it a moderate. This is because it has good damage against smaller targets, however it's lacking when engaging ships of its size or larger. It's also got very good tracking with auto cannons and a capacitor-less gun system, so you don't have to worry about that. The damage selection is also very good with projectile turrets, so switching to fit what you're fighting is also definitely an option here. The tank on the Stabber is moderate at best, honestly. It has a solid buffer tank, easily breaking 20,000 EHP, but its sustain is not high. If the fight is going on and you're losing, you're not going to be able to regain those hit points at all, or regaining between fights might be a little rough if you can't dock or there's no free ports to tether at. The flexibility on this ship is pretty good. I still give it a moderate just because it's really only in the highs that you have some flexibility. The tank, you don't really have many options. You can't really go armor tank in this. I mean, you can, but you're really going to be hindering your ability to move around and apply to things. Now maneuverability. It has a really good base speed, so I give it a high, and it has good turning, and its time to warp is around 5 seconds with my skills, which is pretty good for a cruiser. Unless they have a really fast locker, odds are you're going to be able to get away from a gate or gate camp, or it's fast enough you can just crash gate and take a few hits before jumping gate. So the overall score I give to this Stabber is pretty moderate. It's a really good starting PvP boat for both alphas and omegas alike, and it even is fun after you've already skilled into bigger and better things. It's still a fun ship to fly around. It's fast, you can cover a lot of ground. It's not going to get you carrier dropped on more than likely, but I mean, low second nullsec, that can happen. But even then, you're going to be fast enough to get away from an engagement you don't like. This is definitely something that small ships need to be cautious of though. So if you're flying around and you see a Stabber, think twice before engaging it. It's not an immediate threat, but if you have a few guys, it might be a fun engagement. But if you're just alone, watch D-scan a little bit more carefully until he leaves. As far as the bait probability on this ship, it's highly unlikely. It doesn't have the sustain to hold anything down. If anything, it might be early tackle for a smaller gang. But other than that, you should be able to blast it down real quick regardless of its fit. Even if it's full tank fit, it's at most going to have 30,000 EHP, unless it's some crazy fit that I've never seen before. Alright guys, thank you for tuning in for this episode. Again, like I said at the start, I hope to have more of these out more frequently, and I hope you guys all see this as a beginning of a discussion, as opposed to the end-all be-all guide for this ship. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, feel free to post them in the comments below. Also, if you have suggestions for future ships, I would love to hear them. Remember to join our in-game channel, it's just Threat Assessment Public, or join the Discord where we have a special section for threat assessment. For the meantime guys, fly safe, and I'll see you later.